In just a moment, we're going to talk to Margie Bale, who is a camel vet. She specializes in camels, about one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a new camel owner and how to avoid this mistake. She's going to join us and Tara from Camel Connection as we talk about how to properly feed your camels. Let's dive right in.
Austin Kay and Millie and Solomon, I would love to introduce you to our camel vet, Margie Bale. She's from Australia, just like us, and she's been active in our camel community. Here comes Millie's butt. Yeah.
Oh, heaven. Morning.
Thanks for that, Phil.
Good morning.
Margie helps us a lot, not only with our camels, but also within our camel community, our students that go through virtual camel school and then graduate to the Cameleer Academy membership. Margie does monthly vet talks with us, and her knowledge is just incredible with camels. And every time I talk to her, I learn something new, and she's the one that's staying up to date with the newest and greatest information. So I would love for you guys to meet her and have a chat with her about some of the most common things that camel owners kind of get a little bit wrong when they first get a camel, because that's really the basis on how healthy your camel stays from the moment you get it and thereafter.
Yeah, thanks,
That sounds
Tara.
awesome.
Yeah, because we have a bit of a lack of camel vets in our area.
Shocking, Western Pennsylvania, not many camel vets.
Yeah, well, there's not many, surprisingly, there's not many anywhere, I think, because even in vet school, so a little bit about me, I've finished vet school about 27 years ago, and have been a large animal practitioner, lots of dairy work for that time, worked for the university over here, and just in the last 5 years, I've concentrated just on camels because I dig them. But it's not going to draw a whole lot of vets to it. There's no money in it. There's no huge industry based on it. So if you're into it, you just got to really love the camels. So there's not many vets. Whilst a lot of your local vets will have all the knowledge. Oh, hello, I wish I was there with that camel. They can work on their first principles, but sometimes even the vets, I think the size of the camels, the noise that they make, I think a lot of people will stand off a bit. But I'm happy to talk to any vets anywhere in the world just to give them a few tips from stuff that I have learnt over to time. But look at that. What's his name? His name. I can't see underneath.
This is Millie.
Oh, hi, Millie. Hi.
Say hi, Mill. This is our cow, Millie, and Solomon's over there enjoying some snacks right now, which, after what you tell us tonight, maybe it'll be his last time enjoying those snacks.
That's it.
Eat it today, buddy.
Go, boy. One last go. ISO, lockdown, feed up. I think because oftentimes people get the camels and then come with a preconceived idea about what they are going to do, and that they can just go to the produce and they'll buy food and they can keep them like cows. And that's usually when the problems arise. Like you can buy a beautiful, healthy camel from someone who's got them and breeding them, but by the time they've been on your place, if you haven't been looking after them for 6 months, that's when everything starts to happen. So a lot of times I see people buying camels and they're beautiful, and then 6 months to a year later, they've got issues. So it takes time. But yeah, the most common ones they're the most important. Most common things occur most commonly.
So that sounds great. Let's dive in, Margie. What's the mistakes we got to look out for?
Well, I think the most important thing about camels is the fact that they're not true ruminants. They're called pseudo-ruminants. So they don't traditionally have the 4 stomachs that a cow or a sheep or a goat will have. They don't have one stomach, which a horse has. So they're a completely different subset of animals called pseudo-ruminants. They've got 3 stomachs. The way that they eat, they're called browsers, not grazers. So that's the way they eat and what type of food they eat. And it's a really fine balancing act to get their nutrition right. And I can honestly say that I can't give you a percentage, but most of the problems with camels are due to feed or lack of variation, or just not giving the camels what they would naturally get in their environment where they thrive. That's really the big issue, I think. And we've all, anyone new to camels, you do what until you know better. When you know better, you do better. And that's, I think I got that from Oprah, but it's very, very true, and certainly of camels anyway. So I know, you'll never get judged for trying, but once you know better, you should be able to do a bit better.
That sounds great.
So it really is nutrition. Reproduction is completely different as well. But I honestly think nutrition and just basic animal husbandry, I think a lot of people think, they're so exotic, these animals, we don't need to give them the basics, for vaccinations and worming and all of that sort of stuff. But that's just as important. If you've got camels, they're just not big cows, and they're not big sheep, and they're not big goats. They're camels, and it's different. So
that's a perfect point to kind of transition a little, Margie. When it comes to the nutrition, because you mentioned when you first started talking, a lot of people, they'll feed them like a big cow, or they'll feed them like a big goat. And I do see the way we're feeding right now is very similar to how we feed our cow. So when it comes to their nutrition, how do we make sure that we're not making the same mistake over on that side of things?
I'm so glad you asked that. Let's go back to what we're feeding. So we're not feeding a camel, we're feeding their stomach. So when you look at a camel or a cow, as in a bovine cow, what you're feeding is basically what are they called? Oh my gosh, compost.
Rumen?
Yeah, you're feeding a giant compost, or their rumen, right? So that's what you're feeding. So if you keep the environment, hi Millie, hey girl. If you keep that compost heap perfectly at the right temperature with the right ingredients, don't add a whole lot of, acidic foods that will change the composting. You've got to treat them like a walking compost heap. Now, that's a really simple way of talking about it. When you're comparing with cows and camels, let's just keep it at bovine and camels. It's all about what gut bacteria are in that compost heap. So what bacteria are living in that big compost heap? In cows, they've got some of the same, they've got a different group of bacteria, different percentages of bacteria called strep bovis, say. They've got bacteria that are really good at breaking down short chain fibers, short chain carbohydrates. So, and I'm just looking at that hay, that's actually that's really good. And I'll get to that in a minute. So what you're looking at with cattle, and the reason why they've got those bacteria, again, is evolved. What do cattle eat? Grass. Grass is a short chain carbohydrate. An example of a long carbohydrate is fiber. And that's literally a big piece of grass. So my ideal hay length for a camel is at least 5 centimetres. Now, the reason for that is that we've talked about the bovine compost. The camel compost heap in their rumen has more fibre degrading bacteria. Okay, things called Fibrobacter. That's one of the names of the bacteria in their gut, and it's the most prevalent. So Fibrobacter bacteria only works on large fibrous feeds. So anything over a 5 centimetre stalk length. Now, to keep that environment working, you've got to keep those fibre degrading bacteria healthy. So you've got to keep feeding them what they need, which is high fibre foods or sticky foods or foods with lignin, that stalks. That's why they're different from cattle that really, their rumen needs grass short chain. Camels need fibre long chain. And so if you're in a situation where you're feeding them more like cows in terms of some grain and some chaff or smaller grasses, then you're you're expecting that camel's stomach to be behaving like a bovine, and that's where you get problems. Remember, we talked about stress, physiological stress, the camel not being allowed to do what a camel should. Camels should digest fiber, long-chain carbohydrates, more prevalent to short chains. So hopefully that shows you. So just because cows eat grass, don't think of it as the cow choosing to eat grass. It's the cow has to eat grass to keep its stomach going, to keep its rumen going.
So that's fascinating. First off, what do we want to look for in the hay specifically? You already mentioned like do we want to just grab a bit of it and see like, all right, how long, how thick it is? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, you want to see how sticky it is, like how much like a stick it is.
Okay. I was confused. So you want more sticks?
And sticky.
That's what I was thinking of.
We've all got kids, hey? We've all got the dad jokes down pat. So you want it. How
stalky.
How stalky, that's it. How stalky it is. You want it to be, you don't want it to be so sharp it's got a really, that you're feeding them wood. But we want it to be fairly stalky, and at least Fibrobacter, which is one of the most prominent bacteria in their rumen, really works with a certain, from 5 centimetres and above. Anything less than 5 centimetre stalk length, you're going to be stimulating the wrong type of bacteria.
So that's why it's not ideal to feed camels grain, correct?
Correct. So if you think about grain, it's the shortest chain carbohydrate. So sugar is a really short chain, then they go up, fructose, blah, blah, blah. And when you get to grain, you've got, it's still short. It's a short chain carbohydrate. It's a little bit longer than straight sugar, which is molasses. But grain is a short chain carbohydrate.
People who say that, oh, my camel loves grain. Of course they love it. It's full of sugar. But also, like, people say, oh, someone told me to feed my camel grain to put all this weight on, and they've put all this weight on. What problems are we? So, okay, we get the short-term gain, Margie, but what long-term problems are we looking at?
Oh, so if you are, I honestly believe you will reduce the life of that camel if you keep feeding it grain. It will put on weight, definitely. But what you've done is you've changed the environment in its rumen. So remember, the food comes in, feeds the bacteria in the rumen. Those bacteria die, okay, and get passed out in the small intestine. They're reabsorbed by the body as protein. And that's how they get their protein, right? So one of the ways. If you keep feeding animals grain, you'll change the type of bacteria that are being utilised, and therefore the type of bacteria that are then being absorbed will not be enough to sustain that camel long term. So what they will do is that they will put on fat. It would be like saying, I like eating hot chips, but if I eat hot chips every day, I'm going to get fat. But in 2 years' time, I'm probably going to start to get some other issues with my liver, my kidney, my pancreas, because it's not what my body needs to function. You can survive. That guy survived eating McDonald's for 30 days, remember? But he couldn't do it for 100 days without getting a massive issue. So the grain, it's a tough one because, okay, so in most of my clients, I recommend, because you do need like a little treat feed, and you need maybe a training feed. I prefer a pellet. I prefer to get pellets made with a higher protein content. So like a grass pellet or a lucerne, or you call it alfalfa pellet.
So this is fascinating, Margie. I wanted to show you. I mean, we're feeding her this stuff here. I don't know if you can see, just little oats. I mean, that's tiny little stuff. Now we're giving her and Solomon both it. We are giving them alfalfa pellets and sunflower seeds. Now we're also giving them the hay, but it sounds like we really want to transition off of all of that. Is that correct? Other than the alfalfa pellets?
The alfalfa pellets, I don't mind. It's really good to have a treat for camels because they're so, they just love having the treat. And I mean, Tara's way better with the training. I couldn't train anything. But the alfalfa pellets are good for a treat, and they're a nice little protein hit. The oats aren't too bad because they're whole oats. You haven't ground them up, okay? So the trouble with feeding grain or concentrates, I think you guys call it over there a lot too, is when they crack the grain or they crack the oats, because now that's making it way easier. Those carbohydrate chains are now so small because you've crushed them. So if you've got to feed oats, whole oats is okay. But you know what you're better off doing? Getting an oat and hay. So an oat and hay would be a better option than straight oats. In saying that,
I don't know if they can get it over the oat and hay. Sorry.
Yeah, the nutrition is so tricky. And I think those guys are really working on it and really nailing it down there, because we can't give them exactly what they need as they would be getting in the wild. We really do have to rely on our supplements and a supplement mix that we can give them. But grain is doable. If you're going to transition off grain, it's got to be over a month, because you think about it. You're not feeding the camel, you're feeding the bacteria in their stomach. So if you then stop the grain, those bacteria in the stomach they're going to die out, but you need other bacteria to grow up. So you can't just strip the grain one day, because it'll just make a completely imbalanced. So
it's like going on a human diet, right? Like you do it bit by bit, and if you do it all too quickly, your liver's under this awful pressure, and your kidneys and everything. So that makes complete sense.
Right, especially because she's in milk. Ask about that.
Right, yeah, because she's in milk, she's producing, and she's pregnant right now. Hopefully. we want to transition. For one, getting off of more grain is a good thing, just sustainability wise. So Margie, what's your suggestion for someone in our position? How do you make that transition safely? We're gonna pause this discussion on camel feed and nutrition. We'll come right back to it. But first, it's time to do our Camel Train shout out for today. And today's Camel Train shout out goes to Yvonne. Yvonne Brazgala and her husband are multi-generational true Floridians. They've been growing their veggies in earth boxes for many years. Last year, they went to a spring farmer's market specifically to buy moringa trees. I've never even heard of those. Learn something new every day. She's happy to say she has 7 very healthy ones, and she's given 2 others away. From those, she's successfully cut and started 10 more trees. These sound really cool. I gotta look into moringa trees. Yvonne has been retired for 13 years, and her husband will be retiring in the next few years. They're starting to look for their future homestead, probably not going to be in Florida, and they hope to be there by the year 2025. She says she's been following our journey, our family, for about a year, and she says, "I'm always amazed at your magical family." Thank you so much, Yvonne. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you so much for joining the Camel Train, Yvonne. You have been a big support to us in joining the Camel Train. You have lifetime access to the Pioneer membership now, which hopefully will help you in finding your new homestead and deciding what to do on your new homestead. I hope you and your husband find a beautiful place to start growing all kinds of trees, including moringa trees. And now I have to go Google what a moringa tree is. How do you make that transition safely?
You really utilize your hay at this point, and if you're giving, you just reduce it by, a half. If you're giving 2 scoops of oats, reduce it to 1 scoop, and then add more hay. But it's going to take weeks. It would take at least 4 weeks to transition off a particular feed. The other thing is it's like getting closer to a whole food. It's really hard. The camel feed thing is hard. You need to think about browse, and you need to think about getting them fresh browse. Now that's going to be really hard if you're in an area where there is snow and stuff is frozen. What I mean by fresh browse is like tree cuttings, and guess what? Variety. Variety. And that's difficult from a management point of view, because management, you want to buy 20 ton of a feed in and have it sitting in the shed so you've always got it, right? Variety means you've got to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. So it's really hard to manage. I don't mind what's called a TMR, or a total mixed ration, where you get all bits of everything. You might get some big pieces of hay, you might add a little bit of, like we were talking, copra, or you might make a pre-mix and have that as a total mixed ration. Now, you can talk to agronomists about working out a total mixed ration, but you need to tell them, if anyone is thinking about making their own feed, whoever guy you get to do it has to not do it based on a cow and not do it based on a horse.
And that's such an important point, and that is why we have you, Margie, in our camel community. And we actually have a recipe that you've given us for a camel pellet, which to give to your feed making people. I don't know what you call them. Yes, and that includes certain vitamins and minerals as well. So it's just, I think, Margie, you formulated that on for dairy camels, correct?
Yeah, and I formulated it. It was really interesting, and it just goes to show that the whole thing about camels is learning, and you've got to admit when something hasn't worked. So I formulated this feed for a camel dairy to try and increase their milk yield, okay, because that's what everybody wants. And I thought I'd nailed it, right? And we fed it, and it didn't do anything. It didn't increase their milk yield at all. It just put weight on. So they were healthy. They looked beautiful. But it didn't increase milk yield. And it took me a while to work out why. And it's because camels haven't had any evolution or design to increase milk yield. So if you think about what is a survival thing, to survive as a camel, you put fat on. That's survival.
Wow.
Okay. The only reason why we have dairy cows that produce a truckload of milk, 40 litres, they've been genetically modified over the years to turn feed intake into milk yield output. Camels have had none of that. So that's why the dairy, I think feeding dairy camels is really tricky, because until you get genetic selection, you can't affect the milk yield with feed. I honestly believe that. And I've tried and I failed, but I do have a lovely pellet that keeps them very healthy and fat. It just will not produce an increased milk yield. I'm sorry. I tried. Just to give you an idea, this size book is this is a fabulous PhD that I've read. I wish I'd done it, but I've did assessments myself. I went out and I collected a whole lot of rumen fluid from dead camels, unfortunately, and I got it analysed. And so this book has the name of every bacteria in the camel's gut.
Wow.
Okay, so every page is a different bacteria. Okay? So that's what you're feeding, guys. That's what you're feeding, not the camel. You're feeding that. So what you're going to do is get down to the level of the gut, get down to the level of the rumen, find out, you've got to feed the right bacteria for what they need. And that's really tough, really tough. And I've got a mate who's, she does camels as well. She's a ruminant nutritionist. She did her specialty in that. And I'm going to be talking with her because we're going to talk about getting an actual ration, as in, and I've got it for some clients, kilos per day, how much hay, how much this, how much that, on the weight of the camel. So it's just maths. It's just maths. That's all it is. It's percentages and maths, and I've got all those percentages, but it takes some getting used to, and you can't just go to the produce store because everybody just does what they've always done for the cattle and the goats, and it's just not the same.
is where I believe supplements are really important, and this is why we stress that so much. Like, you know, these are the supplement, and Margie did a chat with us in our Camelier Academy membership about supplements that camels need, and they do need them if they're domesticated. If your camel is not walking out there in the desert in their natural environment, then they need supplements.
I agree. It's not like as humans, we can control what we eat. We can go out, we get vegetables. We may or may not need the extra supplements. Camels, because they're not in their natural environment, they need supplements. They need that multivitamin tablet. You know, they need that because they're not in there. Look, it's not a mean thing, because you were saying and I'm sure you get a lot of people on YouTube giving you grief. They're not in their natural environment where you are, yes, but you're providing them with an enriched environment, okay? Yes, they would be all the camels would be better off just hanging out, faffing around Mongolia, doing their thing. I would be better off in my natural environment, on the beach, on my own, doing my thing. However, we don't get to do that. So it's our responsibility when we have camels, which is what you guys are doing so well, is right, what is the best? I need them in an enclosed barn. I mean, this barn is the Hilton, man. I need them in a good barn. I need to ask the right questions. I need to do the right things to get them sorted. So in no way, shape or form is you guys having camels or keeping other animals in any way detrimental to their health at all. So don't even just backhand to the haters, whatever. I'm not into that. But with nutrition, guys, really think about it. Get on Google, do some info. I mean, a lot of it's pretty dry nutrition. I mean, I hated learning about nutrition at uni all those years ago, but it's important. And to make it practical, Austin, you got to think outside the square. I mean, years ago, I'm very clinical. I like prescription medication. I'm not, as holistic as I should be because of this.
I saw that.
Always got the Diet Coke.
I do. However, and I didn't realise 20 years ago how much nutrition really does play a part. I really didn't. And in the last 5 years of working with camels, they are unforgiving. They're unforgiving. If you don't get their nutrition right, they are unforgiving. Yes. But be careful too, because you can't extrapolate from one species to camel. I'm not saying I'm the expert. I am not. But I know experts. Where I come in is I try and make it practical for the camel owner. I'm like, because it's no point, like you can go to an expert and they say, you need this percentage of this. And I'm like, well, where do they buy that from? Like, what is that called? What is that named? How much do you need to buy in? And that's where I can come in. I'm not saying that I've got that, I'm not a professor of nutrition in camelids, but I can work it all together. But you're absolutely right. I don't think you can cure cancer with your diet, but you can certainly cure a lot of digestive issues just with diet.
I like what you just said there, Margie.
She's making it practical.
Yeah, because I think what happened is for the last 30 minutes, we just scared everybody like me away from owning a camel. But then in the last 30 seconds, you just saved it saying, this is a lot. Someone like me hears this and goes, and Tara knows, because my first interview with them, I was like, I want to get camels. And by the end, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to get camels. Yeah. But the fact that you guys are here, that's what you do. You have, so tell us, if people want to get camels and they were just scared, how can you help them?
Oh, I'd love to help, because I see my role as, and I see vets and medical people's role as kind of like a scientific conduit. So I think a good vet or a good doctor or a good communicator can take all the really difficult concepts and transfer it into something that I tell. That's, I think, the good part about being a vet for so long with people, with clients, not in a lab, is that I need to be able to tell the client, okay, well, this is how you fix the broken leg in the situation you've got here. You need 2 sticks, a car tire, and a rope. I've got to take, the only way I can be a good vet is if I take the really difficult scientific concepts and give it to the client. So it's my job to get the information. So what I would do is I get the information from the owner. I would then get all the books, okay, all the books. I'd sit down, I'd work it out. Then I do the part that's really important. I go, right, well, what the hell can they buy where they are or in their country? And how much is it going to cost? And all of that. So just, it's like anything in education. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. But just because you don't know something, you do have to put a lot of trust in people. But sometimes just knowing that something's complicated is enough. And then you can just go, that's complicated. I know it's important. I don't have to know every bit about it. I just need to find the right person who's going to tell me what I need to do.
We say all the time on our channel, find good mentors. That's our advice always, is find good mentors. That's why we reached out to Tara and Russell. That's why we reached out to you and the audience. We haven't told them yet, but we're going to be working with Margie. Millie's pregnant. We want to make sure that she well, we hope she's pregnant. We hope she's still pregnant. We want to make sure she gets what she needs. And even with still being milked, we want to make sure that we get what we need, but not at a cost there. So we're going to be working with Margie, and we'll put links in the description of this video. So if people want to get a hold of the Camel Academy, Margie's in the Camel Academy. Is that right, Tara?
I just do whatever Tara tells me because I'm only I'm only here because Tara and Russell, and now I've met you guys, because they are, they're willing and they're honest and they care and they know. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this, because it's too hard to get a group of people. Everyone I've met through Tara actually really wants good information, because I'm only interested in working with people that want good information. Not in a mean way. I just can't do it. So yeah, I'm only here because of Tara's involvement. So I'm down with that.
So
You got to get the right people and pay me in Margie.
So Margie is available for consults. You can go to our website and hit on Camel Shop, and she's available for consults there, private consults. But yeah, like people who are in our virtual camel school, that's like the secondary school of camel training and handling, and then people can graduate to the Camelier Academy, which is our membership, and that's where every month Margie comes in and does vet talks, which are like, this has been amazing, but then Margie just breaks everything down even further, and we do particular topics and stuff like that.
Bit more specific on products and what you can, really specific issues like a condition or a disease or something that you're finding that's wrong. But I guess, the opportunity to talk to people that want to do better. And for me, I'm always learning. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not reading another article or doing something with camels. It's actually getting a bit exhausting. But I'm
hearing you.
Oh, geez. But the thing is, just think about feeding the camel. And I guess if I can leave on this point or whatever, if you allow the camel to express its camelness, and that is hang out with other camels or other animals, treat it like a camel, give it variety to eat, and let it express its camelness, which it can do in a barn and it can do in the snow and it can do in the desert. But it's just you've got to work with it.
Yeah.
I love Millie.
So make sure if you get a camel, not to treat it like a large cow, not to feed it like a large cow. Camels are different animals entirely. Avoid making that beginner mistake. We're going to try our hardest, and you'll see in the upcoming videos the lengths we're going to make sure that we're feeding our camels properly, the way they're supposed to be fed, not treating them like large cows. If you want to check out Margie, Camel Connections, if you want to become part of the Camel Connection Academy, where you get access to Margie, her monthly talks, and you can have consultations with her, click on the link below. We have been taking virtual camel school with Camel Connection. It's been really helpful, and Margie has been awesome to work with as well. So we really highly recommend them if you're thinking about getting into camels.